Welcome to Shore Perspectives, a community feature of WESR Radio, highlighting the spirit of the shore from those who call it home.
Hey, I'm Bill Dyas, and I'm from Machipongo, Virginia. Yeah, hats are a bit of my life. I love to have a good attitude. I think it's important in life to have a good attitude. So throughout my entire life, I've been a public servant. I started as a volunteer fireman and rescue squad guy over in Virginia Beach, age 14. And so pretty much everything that I've done my entire life came with a hat. The fireman's hat, soldier's hat, policeman's hat, you name it. And but these stingy brims, the fedoras, have become my style since the 80s, and I've collected quite a few of them along the way. I got a bit of a hat problem, but I do like it, and it does help me with my attitude. I've been passionate about lots of things in my life. Back in 2013, I came home from, at that time, Seattle. That was my last military assignment teaching ROTC at Seattle University. I worked at Microsoft on the executive protection team and traveled with the Microsoft executives throughout the world providing security and logistics. So when I came home from that in 2013, I thought I was going to retire, fish, hang out on the Eastern Shore. It didn't work out that way. About 3 months into retirement, I was so bored, I couldn't stand myself. So I started working at the state park. And I realized that that's why I left and joined the Army to begin with. Back in the 70s, I had been a park ranger at what was then Seashore State Park over at Cape Henry. I did every job in the park. I cut grass, I cleaned bathrooms from midnight till 8 in the morning. I worked at the contact station, I did maintenance, I just did everything. But as I got to the point where I was graduating from high school, it became apparent that I couldn't go any further with the state parks until I got a degree. I couldn't move up that chain and become a full-time ranger until I got a bachelor's degree. And that wasn't an option for me at the time financially, so I joined the Army. And I just literally just got up at lunchtime and left the park and joined the Army. And shipped out a month later, 2 months later, actually 3 months later. And that was in 1980. And I never looked back, and off I went to active duty Army. I was a military policeman, and then I went over to Europe and did some counterterrorism protective service work in Europe and the Middle East for a while. And I came back to the United States and then eventually transitioned over into infantry. Long story short, I did 24 years of active duty, National Guard and Reserve, and retired out of the Army Reserve in 2004. That whole time I was doing that, I was also a civil servant for the DOD and worked as an educator, an education administrator. Managed to find time to raise a couple kids too. I was a single parent with 2 boys at the time. So, went off and did all those things and came back and started working at the park, realizing, wow, that's why I joined the Army to begin with. I had forgotten over those 40 years, or those 35 years or 30 years, why I had left Virginia and joined the Army to begin with, which was to get a degree and come back as a park ranger. So I did. I came back with a master's degree, paid for by, my service, and went to work as an interpreter at Kelley State Park and became the lead interpreter and the education programs administrator there. And over the 6 years that I worked there, worked deeply within my community, as well as all over the Chesapeake Bay region with schools, students, creating partnerships between some schools that were doing well and had means with other schools that didn't, trying to bring resources to my own community here in Northampton County and up in Accomack County. So working as an interpreter and education administrator at the parks and doing these things, I felt that I could do more good in my community if I went to work for the schools. So after some very careful consideration and talking with some of my mentors, I became an educator in Northampton County Public Schools. I work at both Kiptopeke and Akahonik Elementary Schools, splitting my time evenly between the two. And that has embedded me into my community, into my the families, into the churches, into the community centers, into the need of my community in a way I could never have imagined. In my particular role, I'm the in-school suspension monitor, and I work primarily in student recovery and trying to help students to be successful, to find ways to reach these students that are having trouble in class that result in disciplinary issues, and finding a way to reach them, to be successful, to help them achieve what it is that they're there to achieve, because that's why we send them to school, right? And we're finding ways to do that. And the schools, fortunately support me and other teachers in doing that and finding ways that we can reach those children. So, I can tell you, if you become an educator, you should have done it in 2020, because if you can get through 2020 as an educator, my gosh, you got a good 20 years ahead of you. I mean, it was a very interesting year. I was just getting my stride, I thought, when we got sent home. But nobody really got, we didn't really get sent home. So I was asked and agreed and actually had a blast recording children's books on YouTube and uploading them to the kids' YouTube channels so that they could stay connected with school, stay connected, and in my own little way help out. And it was well received, and that's what I did the entire rest of the school year. So I would, there were other things I was involved in, but that was a primary thing, and I took that to heart. I went out and got books that people brought me books, believe me or not. My sisters, my neighbors, people who saw it on Facebook and YouTube started bringing me books they wanted to hear me read, and it became a true pleasure for me. I think the kids enjoyed it. I know the parents did. We're in a weird world nowadays with the COVID and things are changing. I couldn't go on and do my normal summer activities. And even after I left the park year before last year, I was able to take care of my outdoor needs by offering owl prowls. So the library here in town asked me to do them, and I did owl prowls every other week, all summer, right on up into the winter. And it was well attended. We'd go over to the preserve there and look at owls, and individuals would call me up and take me out. But this year was different. There wasn't a whole lot going on because people aren't traveling and things like that. And I got a deep down desire to get out and do these things. So it's through the school and recording these things and uploading that I was able to actually fulfill those needs that I have, and still communicate with them and get out. And like tonight, I'm doing an owl prowl for 30 people over in Bay Creek, which is an amazing thing to have anybody turn out, 30 people to turn out to go walk in the dark with me and talk to owls and have the owls fly in and talk to them. It's really good. And just, I'm passionate about doing these things, but there's nothing like what happened last night in the streets of Cape Charles. I'm with a friend from Pulaski and her kids. We're walking down the street in the dark. Brown Dog's still open, so it's not too late. And all of a sudden I hear a child yell out. And he's not talking to me. He just read it on the wall. Or somebody, Ranger Bill's doing an owl prowl tomorrow night. Oh my gosh. It was one of those, And my friends are like, you're famous. I'm like, no, I'm not, but isn't that cool? And so the fact that, people can get passionate about the things that I'm passionate about makes me even more passionate. It's not a secret that we have challenges over here with regards to our demographics, with our income levels, with our education levels. That's part of being in rural America. And it's part of, being an educator is accepting that, but pushing continuously for improvement, finding better ways to reach our children, and constantly reaching out for more funding and support to do so. And so that's really what my passions are. If I'm not in a classroom teaching, I'm outside teaching. If I'm not outside teaching, I'm somewhere advocating for that and trying to raise awareness, funding, support, and get buy-in from others in the community to do things. A typical example is we built an outdoor classroom at Topeka Elementary School. It's a beautiful nature park. We built volunteers, grant funding, volunteer funding. The principal, Ms. Parker, her daughter, her brother, her family came out and dug, cut trees. Neighbors showed up with farm equipment and helped us create this outdoor learning environment for Topeka Elementary School that we could be proud of and that our children could embrace and utilize. And then we worked very hard to both create learning materials and ongoing professional development support for those teachers so that, they will use it and so they'll use it effectively. That's going to be really important this year. We're already talking about, how we're going to teach children this year, how are we going to be in class, out of class, distance learning, and there's a big push for and a desire and a need for outdoor learning. It doesn't have to be environmental education, which is important, but you can teach poetry sitting under a tree. You know, you can teach the humanities, you can teach the sciences, you can have physical education, you can have all of that, mathematics, economics. There's not a subject that you can come up with that we can't teach outside. If we prepare for it and if we give them the tools that they need. We're committed to bringing those outdoor learning opportunities and those alternative learning opportunities to our community. Because as we talked before, as an in-school suspension monitor, as an educator, as a teacher, we have to find different ways to reach different children. One size does not fit all. If it was, I would never have been successful at my life, and I wouldn't have a master's degree, I wouldn't have a bachelor's degree, and I probably wouldn't be here today. Because I'm a difficult learner, and I was a difficult student. And I laugh today that I'm an educator. However, that's what I do, is try to find and work with other organizations, work with my administrators, work within the guidelines that I'm allowed to guide. Because I have to keep in mind I am a public servant. There are rules I have to follow, but constantly pushing those boundaries, trying to bring to our community, to our children, to their families, just the things they need to be successful. The most important thing I learned, or the one thing I would impart upon them, may not be the same thing in reality. And it's hard this day and age, because I could be very, education is the key, kids. You need to get an education. But you need to be you. You need to develop you as you wish to be and stand your ground on that. Doesn't mean that you can turn around to your parents and say, well, I'm not doing math today because I'm going to be a musician. No, you still got to do your math today, all right? But as you move forward in life, you can concentrate on things that are going to make you successful in what you wish to be within you. And so I think it's important to find out who you are, find out where you need to be, where you want to be, and find out the way to get there. And if you can't find a way to get there, then you turn to reliable mentors and leaders and spiritual guiders and ask them for the help. But don't just follow the blind. Don't just follow the direction others tell you need to go in. But still, when you're told to go to school, go to school. When you're told to go, to the cafeteria, go to the cafeteria. But chart your own course, chart your own life, and stay the course.
For Shore Perspectives and WESR Radio, I'm Kelley Gaskell.